expression of the Creator, elected to come here to experience this physical trip, then we are all going back, and we all go back together because we all came out together.
That's kind of a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you decide to put any kind of labels on it. What really ticks me off are the priests, the Brahmins, who would get in the way of rational experience and
of course.
Direct experience.
Yeah, because if they allow that, then they have no control.
Exactly. Those people who are bound to those individuals are controlled by them.
That's
Unfortunately, we find ourselves, you particularly because of your particular line of work here with the radio show,
Yep.
You're going to run up against a wall. There's a lot of people who want to be bound to these particular myths. And they're comfortable. Life's easy.
Oh.
They got NASCAR, they got video games,
Absolutely.
all of their desires are being pandered to, their fears are being exploited, they're happy.
That's correct.
And you stand out here and you say, wait a second, people, you don't control your own mind, and, bad, dastardly things are going on. And I've run into this on a personal level, and it's like as they say, my pappy from Missouri used to say, can't teach a pig to sing. It won't work, and you're just going to annoy the pig. And sure enough, them pigs are getting mighty annoyed.
Mighty annoyed, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always want people to understand, because we talked about vibration, talked about if you don't try to get control of your mind, then somebody else will. And we talk about programming and what have you, but I think the most awesome type programming is we have, and I forget how many thousands of satellites around the world. And every one of those satellites is beaming down information, whatever that information is. And that every cell in the human body is a transceiver, all right? Worked on electromagnetic process. And what we are doing, we are receiving with our huge antennas everything that is being beamed down to us.
Can't help it. Can't avoid it.
No, cannot avoid it. And yet, a person can block it if they go through the training and learn a lot like you're talking about, Cliff, learn how to function and get control of those levels of consciousness where this information automatically flows in.
And it's very difficult. This is not to say it's an easy task. In fact, it's probably the hardest thing anybody will ever attempt.
Yeah, but without it, you don't have anything.
I think it's probably the most worthwhile thing. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Briefly here, let me, you brought up the issue of vibration, and I wanted to give out this idea to the public domain. I'd sort of spaced on it. I'd come up with this idea a while back, and I thought it would be perfect for somebody in Gaza and Palestine area there to go ahead and put together a little factory and build these devices. Mm-hmm. And the idea for the devices comes from the little piezoelectric crystals that are in your watch that keep time.
Yep.
If these are interesting little crystals, because if you jolt them with electricity, they pulse. But if you compress them, they produce electricity. So here's a spiffy little idea for a windmill with no moving parts, or a vibratory electrical inducer, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Take a piece of plastic tubing. On the inside of that plastic tubing, have a tightly fitted wiring that, like shielding, one might find on coax cable, the copper interwoven shielding.
Yep.
In the middle of all of that, dump in tons of these little tiny piezoelectric crystals as scrap from the watch industry. Surround them with a never sets up phenolic resins, quasi-rubbery. Okay, and so you'd end up with something that would, for all intents and purposes, be like the whipcord antennas they used to have made out of fiberglass that would go on the back of all the Jeeps.
Right.
Okay, you might notice that like a fiberglass fishing pole, if you grabbed one end of it and give it a little shake, you're going to get this sort of quasi-sine wave effect through it.
Right.
Well, with this particular device, each and every one of those crystals, when compressed by that wave flowing through it, would generate a microamperage of electricity. Picked up by the copper shielding, since they would all touch that copper shielding and conduct it down to the bottom.
Interesting.
And it works.
Is it okay? That was my question. It does work,
and it's cheap and it's scalable.
So
I don't have the capability of developing it all the way through, so we might as well put it out in the public domain.
I think
it requires the source of the crystals. It requires some copper conductor, either as a thinner solid wire or as a woven material.
Mesh. Yeah, the mesh. Yeah.
and some kind of polycarbonate sheathing that's UV resistant, because the idea is you'd make these things about 6-8 feet high,
Sure.
or so, put them on platforms all over anywhere there's vibration.
Right.
Anything from truck road beds to cars. I don't know if it would be economical on a car, whether it would return enough electricity to compensate for the wind damage. But you put them on catwalks that people walk on, apartment buildings.
Has this Clif been developed at all?
I've done a little bit of work enough to know that it functions.
Yeah.
And the way to deal with the electricity is to feed it in through Trace Engineering's solar panel collector thing.
Yep. Interesting. I wonder, or maybe you know, how much energy, electrical energy in this case, would or could it produce?
Oh, you could get, if the rod were constructed with the appropriate frequency, that's the issue of getting the frequency of bends to cause the compression for the amount of crystals. You could easily have like maybe 4 or 5 of those provide enough amperage to contribute to running a refrigerator.
Really? My gosh.
Depend on the amount of vibration. If you're in a windy area where they're going to vibrate 24 hours a day, no worries whatsoever.
Yeah. Wow. Now that is something that might be interesting to follow up on.
Easily done.
Yep. And if you made them thicker,
correct, and larger, taller, you might be able to generate serious current at serious voltage and serious amperage.
Very interesting. We're going to have to talk about this and see what it would take and get some genius like Vince, who is our resident genius here, who keeps everything running. Maybe he can come up with an idea. That's a neat idea. I like that. And give it to the public domain, so
anybody that's got the mental acuity is welcome to take it and run with it, make a fortune. The only moral obligations they'll have will be internal.
Yeah. Excellent.
But it'll certainly benefit humans to have these things running around so we don't suck up so much oil.
We don't need oil. We
look at things wrongly. We've been hamstrung by all this centralization stuff, and here we should be doing all these. Everybody should have a sun oven. I've got a sun oven. I can cook 3 meals a day, even here north of 47.
Yeah, absolutely. You can. I could cook it for the town. We have so much.
Well, you could be running a solar furnace that powered a closed-circuit steam generator.
Well, that's true, too, yeah.
Get all your electricity.
It's better than what I'm doing now, I'll tell you.
Well, there you go. That's why people that are really interested in being self-sufficient and so on ought to go to George Ure's site, because he's developing things like the solar-powered approach to running a small steam turbine.
I'm going to have to talk to George, because in the past 2 years, I'm embarrassed to say, in the past 2 years, I have gone through, get this, 13 generators. I have gone through 2 propane. I have gone through 2 diesel, and 9 gas ones.
Well, now the gas ones I understand. The life on those engines is such, if you don't change the oil every 5 hours, you're going to get barely 900 hours out of them.
Yep.
I changed the oil. I'm shocked. I've got a Chinese Hanzi diesel here that'll purr for 40 years.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's ugly, and you got to keep maintaining the oil and tightening down all the little nuts and bolts on the fuel line. But and it puts out 7.5 kilowatt. I can run kilns on it if I want.
Yep. Where do you get something like that?
There's a guy who does the retail of those out of San Francisco. The name is Hanzi, Hanzi.
Okay.
It's actually a marine engine that's been adapted to running a Canadian-built genset.
I will check into that tomorrow.
Because if you're dependent on your own power, I would look to the simplest form of diesel I can get.
Yeah.
The old marine 4-bangers have been proven for, so many generations.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at the boats. The fishing boats run for 25 years on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With people with no formal training, yeah.
Right. Hey, Cliff, we have to do this again